Hello there again, YouTube. It's once again I, your Gothic host with the most, Knox Burzum, back to bring you more blasphemous banter. Today we end Creature Feature Week with the uncompromising vision of Ridley Scott with Alien, the original, possibly the best in the whole saga, depending on who you talk to. From 1979, rated at R, and yes, it earns that rating. Hour and 57 minutes this fucker clocks in at. Strap in, because it's going to be a long, bumpy ride. Written by Dan O'Bannon, screenplay side, and story by Dan O'Bannon. However, it was inspired by Chariots of the Gods. Not entirely sure how that works out. I've done a bunch of digging into it, and there seems to be a little bit of a hiccup in the information between when Ridley Scott read Chariots of the Gods and when the story got written. So, I don't know, fucking ask Hollywood. I can't figure it out. At any rate, obviously directed by Ridley Scott, starring Sigourney Weaver as Ripley, Tom Skerritt as Dallas, John Hurt as Kane, who aged a bit like milk, but that's okay. It happens. Veronica Cartwright as Lambert, who we both agree her hairstyle in the movie, for whatever reason, does her no goddamn favors. Harry Dean Stanton as Brett, who is essentially the Klinger, only he's the Corporal Klinger of the group, only he doesn't do anything comedic, which is kind of amusing. He looks like Klinger, he's dressed like Klinger, he acts like Klinger if Klinger had no sense of humor. It's weird. At any rate, Ian Holm plays Ash, who, if you've seen this movie before, fuck you, Ash. Yafet Koto plays Parker, the token black guy, the literal token black guy in this movie. Balaji Badejo plays the actual alien itself. And Helen Horton playing Mother.
Voice of the ship.
Right. Now, according to this, there was also an Eddie Powell playing the alien, which is kind of weird because I've watched a ton of behind the scenes and I've never heard the name Eddie Powell before, but I guess there we are. It's possible that two people were casted to use the suit. Maybe it was really, really, really exhausting being in it. I know that the suit wasn't one enormous practical effect.
Maybe one did the puppetry for the mouth, and maybe one was the body.
You know what? That would honestly make sense, especially considering the fact that the mouse basically has a half-ass proboscis coming out of it.
Morgan would know.
Morgan would know, actually. Any rate, let's see here. Parents Guide. Sex and nudity, mild to non-existent. Violence and gore, moderate.
Moderate?
Moderate. Motherfucker, if you call a literal chest burster scene mild to moderate, I mean, you're my kind of guy, but I don't think that's how the rest of it's going to see.
Intense scenes weird?
Yes. Profanity, moderate. Alcohol, drugs, and smoking, mild, because they just smoke a couple cigarettes. And frightening and or intense scenes, fucking severe. Yeah, well, no shit. The plot line. Essentially an ore mining vessel from the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, manned by a group of what is essentially interstellar truckers, who are in cold stasis at the time, happened by LV-246. I think that's the designation of the planet. And they basically are... They are able to pick up a transmission coming from the planet, and part of Weyland-Yutani's corporate SOP policy is that if they receive any kind of transmission at all that could be deemed to be from an intelligent source, that they are required to investigate it.
And if they don't, it's explained in the movie that they forfeit all their shares, which is any pay.
Right, which, no offense, but these guys are literally coming home 100% full on the bay doors. No, they're not missing this payday. So they go down, they investigate. One of them ends up jumping into a pit with a ton of very
creatures,
shiny...
we won't say what.
With a ton of creatures inside of eggs. He wakes one up inadvertently and decides...
It attaches itself to him.
Because it's a dumb white boy, and this is what he does when the alien egg opens. So pretend that right in front of me is an invisible egg. Oh, this thing from an alien race that I've never seen before has opened. I will stick my whole entire fucking face directly over it. And he's dead. What a surprise, right?
Heavyweights,
Yeah, this motherfucker was a lemming in previous life. Any rate, they get him back on board against Ripley's direct commands because she is at that time the officer in command. Tom Skerritt Dallas overrules her, which literally puts the entire original point to them being out in space in jeopardy because he's now broken quarantine, which is another SOP that they have for it.
I thought Dallas was the commanding officer, but since he went off the ship, she had to stand in for him.
Yeah, I just said that.
Oh, sorry, it didn't come off that way.
It's all good. Sorry, I'm a little confusing when I talk. My wife sometimes helps. Dallas is obviously the officer in charge. He's a captain, essentially. Ripley is a lieutenant, essentially. And, in fact, that's her full name is Lieutenant Ellen Ripley. So, there you go. Anyway, she is in charge while he's off the ship. She says no. He says yes. She says no. He says yes. She says no. And she says, fuck you, lady. You've got, no dick, so you don't get to make the decision. And he opens the door. Lets in the crewman who has
we know why he opens the door.
Yeah, we know why. We'll get into that in a minute. Opens the bay doors, lets the guy in. Long story short, they try to get the ganglion off of... That's the proper name for a facehugger, by the way. I don't know if y'all know that, but their actual name is ganglion. I don't know why. That's the name that was come up with. Take it up with Ridley Scott, not me. Anywho, they try to get off of him. When they cut it, it bleeds acid blood. What a surprise, because this is alien. And they eventually discover that it lets him go. And just randomly runs away and dies in the corner somewhere. And when they go to autopsy it, you get some of the best practical effects ever filmed because it was actual animal parts that were used for the facehugger. Kind of neat stuff. Had to be remade on a daily basis because apparently it came from a slaughterhouse. We're still not entirely sure what the hell Ridley Scott used because he refused to tell people more.
So you probably don't want to know.
Yeah, so you really honestly probably don't want to know. I don't want to know, and that's saying something. The infamous chestburster scene occurs about 5 minutes later while they're around the dinner table about to go back into hypersleep. Chestburster comes out, says, hello, my baby, hello, my darling, and runs off.
Hello, my fun time
gal. Yeah, exactly. Honestly, I kind of like the version from Spaceballs better, but that's just because I like dark humor. Any rate, they cobbled together a device that's a combination of sonar and radar put into one that basically monitors movement itself instead of sound or just your location. It just, as long as you move within a certain range, it picks you up. And that's the tool that ironically ends up getting used for most of the 3 movies in the original trilogy, even though it's not a very effective tool at all because it only has like a 15-foot range. So I don't know why they...
I think because it moves so fastly, it adds to the emotional atmosphere of things and the intensity.
That might be that might be it, honestly. I've tried to figure out for years and years and years why they never improved upon it. But that might honestly...
Maybe because
yeah.
plot-wise, they don't... It serves a more simpler purpose than we're thinking.
You know what? That's totally fine. Either way, they end up going out searching for the thing. They, of course, end up finding it one by one by it sneaking out of areas and grabbing them one at a time and killing them in extremely creative ways. You don't end up actually seeing the alien full on until almost the end of the movie, which
is probably why you have 2 people being the alien. One is for the close-ups and one is for the full body shot.
That's actually probably exactly it. Ridley Scott did mention that he basically wanted it to be a haunted house movie in space. Excuse me. I had some new wine today and it's giving me the burps. And it kind of is a haunted house movie in space. Eventually they end up being able to, they think, corner the alien and get rid of it. Of course, it hasn't been. And as Ripley tries to go to bed, being the only surviving member of the crew left,
other than the cat,
Jonesy, she discovers that it has tucked itself away into the escape pod of the Nostromo.
It actually blends into the piping.
And it's this really neat scene where she kind of Sing Song speaks this lullaby to it as she floods the area with gaseous nitrogen to scare it out of its little hidey hole. And then after making sure that Jonesy is secure and she's secured, she hits the exhaust button and evacuates the entire fucking escape pod and blows that fucker into space. That is how the movie ends, and that is the short and sweet version of it.
Oh, you should have said spoilers at some point.
Oh well, fuck me. This is probably my second favorite space horror film of all time.
Next to The Thing.
Next to The Thing, yeah. I'm a bit biased. I give it a 9.5. What do you give it again, Val?
I was leaning with 8.5 or a 9. I was torn. I think I'll go with a 9.
The like is a 9. I give it a 9.5. So we'll split it at 9. Now, if you don't want any further information on the movie, stop it here. But 3, 2, 1, and so meta knowledge. As we all know, this movie is the base concept from Ridley Scott with Chariots of the Gods. And
I actually think that was Prometheus.
Really? You think that none of the other movies had anything to do with it?
Well, I know for sure he associated the movie Prometheus with Chariots of the Gods.
I agree.
And you were saying earlier you thought there was an issue with timeline of things?
I think... Okay, you know what? I take it back. I'm not really sure how this movie became associated with the rest of Ridley's vision. The movie was written as a standalone, but did very well, and only about 2 years later, the sequel was out. The sequel follows roughly the same timeline as does the third, even though it jumps somewhere close to 300 years
and then there's
between
the
those
fourth.
3 films. Yeah, and then there's Resurrection, which
I like because it's fucking spastic.
that movie doesn't know what the hell it wants to be.
I like that it's spastic. I like that Ridley's fucking broken.
Yeah.
In an overpowered kind of way.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then you have Winona Ryder, who's the sapphic robot android.
Yeah. I like that movie, but it's kind of a guilty pleasure. At any rate,
yeah. Oh, and Ron fucking Perlman.
Right. It is hard to tell what was established in the mind of the director and what was established afterwards for this movie.
But Ridley's got a malleable mind. It's always changing, adapting. That's why he has multiple versions of every fucking movie ever fucking made by him.
I agree.
So, it's possible that if he didn't have that concept of the first movie, it could have grown over time.
It is possible. If we want to go in meta knowledge, we know that essentially Wayland purposely sent or set their shipping route for the return home to go by LV-246.
Or even if they didn't know exactly which planet, that they knew that, what did they refer to the big people as in
The engineers.
The engineers. So they knew of the engineers. They knew of some of the stuff that went down. We know that now in Prometheus. So meta-knowledge, we knew that Waylon Jennings knew that there would be the xenomorph out there. And usually there's a distress signal, so they probably didn't know exactly which planet, but they set it up so that way they would eventually come across it. And they set up such rules that essentially forced whomever is on the transport to have to go out and get it.
I guess that is fair. They essentially sent these people on a suicide mission, and they knew it. But that's okay.
I don't think they specifically, because I don't think they had a mission to go to that exact planet. They were just traveling by, and then they got the distress signal, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. Let's see here. Technical stuff about the movie. The casting. The casting is absolutely perfect.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's chemistry in this movie is extremely believable. Costuming. The costuming is absolutely fantastic. These people are supposed to be truckers in space. They look like truckers in space. They act like truckers in space. It's great. Yeah. Half of them are wearing fucking Chuck Taylors. It's great. They've each got a specific role on the ship that they are a specialist in, which is nice because it makes it a very believable crew. Yeah, there's only one science officer on the ship, which is very believable because all the rest.
That's Ridley, if I remember right. No, wait, that's the android.
Yeah, it's Ash. Which is actually very believable because all the rest are supposed to be there to mine iron ore.
Meta-wise, we know that Ash is an android.
Yep.
And that he is programmed with the information that Waylon Jennings wants him to know. So he defies protocol and allows the contaminated people back on the ship intentionally because they need a viable host. It's even programmed in the computer of the ship.
Yeah.
Mother.
That the entire crew is expendable as long as they procure the specimen.
A viable specimen.
Which is pretty fucking brutal, dude.
So it's been programmed in how many other transport ships too?
Possibly, we don't know.
Spray and pray.
Yeah, I guess. The photography for the movie is amazing. They didn't have an enormous budget to do this thing on, and when you watch the behind the scenes, a lot of the scene transitions occurred through basically paper machine manholes because they didn't have enough budget to make like entire sections of the ship. So
maybe that's why they didn't have a full-on body shot until the end because they only had so much budget.
That might be. So what they do is they made a couple of different hallways, and then they would light it differently, or they would put like doodads and accessories in to make it look different, or they'd use fog machines or liquid nitrogen sprays to make it look like it was a different area. Some of the places were basically just on an enormous sound stage, and they would just throw together things that they think might be inside of a ship the size of Texas, because when you get an outer view of the ship, like, this thing is absolutely fucking huge. Like, the Nostromo itself is probably literally the size of the state of Texas. Like, it contains something like, I think it says at the beginning of the movie, 1 million tons of raw ore. So it's crazy big. And so at one point in the movie, there's a scene where, what's his name? Fucking... I apologize, I don't have these all memorized. Where Kane, or not Kane, but there we go, where Brett is looking for Jonesy's and the alien at the same time, and comes upon an area where it's basically raining indoors because the room is so big and there's so much humidity. So it's kind of hard to get a feel for the scope of the ship, which is pretty neat because, again, smaller budget, yet used very effectively. The alien itself is one enormous wearable suit. And at the time, it was a very unique concept designed by H.R. Geiger and taken pretty much from his original artwork. He got to work really closely with Ridley Scott after that movie was made on the subsequent films. And it kind of shows because the set pieces in the subsequent films have a lot more to do with Geiger-esque artwork than in the first film. I don't know. I really love this movie. It takes you to that certain place where like you can really kind of believe that all this is happening. And it's the start to this really big epic that spans centuries of time. It's a neat idea. I really like it. I think you will too. And I know that there weren't a ton of spoilers here, but that's okay because I want you to experience the film. So, again, I give it a 9. Peace, love, heavy fucking metal. Watch the movie. Like, comment, subscribe. Bye.